Down in Lima, Peru, if you go south about 8 hours drive through the mountains, you come to the city of Ica. Ica, Peru is right near the desert that is the driest desert in the world. My understanding is it's only rained once there in 400 years. Not a good place for a garden. But the Spanish came through this area about 400 years ago, in the late 1500s. They came through and they saw these strange white lines. Not very wide, but there were these white lines, just somebody scratched like a plow on a field. Perfectly straight lines, you know, for a long ways. Nobody knew what they were until airplanes were invented. When you get way up in the sky, you notice these are pictures of giant images. You ever heard of those before? The Nasca desert lines, you know? They have, you know, spiders and hummingbirds, and I mean, 4 or 5 miles long. Sometimes they go right, you come to a mountain, it stops, you go on the other side of the mountain, and it takes off in an exact straight line. So these guys really knew something about surveying and mathematics to be able to do this. Or, there's another reasonable theory, I think. They had flight. They knew how to fly. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Here's people after the flood living to be 400 years. You could learn a lot in 400 years. People before the flood are 900 years old. You could really learn a lot in 900 years. Plus, you can go talk to your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather because he's still alive. You can get all this. The wisdom would be incredible, the knowledge that was preserved. In the Smithsonian, they have, and I'll show you when I get to video number 7, our question-answer, we've got a whole section on, was ancient man primitive? We have a book, as a matter of fact, on that topic here that we sell. Or we do sell the book After the Flood by Bill Cooper. I forgot about that. We just started carrying that. The Puzzle of Ancient Man is a great book, which shows, for instance, pictures of things that are found in graves that just shouldn't be there. Like a grave in South America, they found an airplane. This grave was at least 1,000 years old. An airplane, a little toy airplane. So Smithsonian has it, and they have it labeled as a stylized insect. Tell me that's a stylized insect. In 1571, the Spanish reported finding stones with strange animals carved on them. Now, who remembers roughly when were dinosaurs rediscovered in modern times? The first one was reassembled, the bones put together when? 1809. 1571. By 1571, most dinosaurs were extinct, been killed off by man. They had not been rediscovered yet to put them together in museums. So we have a several hundred-year time lag in here where nobody knew about dinosaurs. Never heard of them. Never saw one. But the Spanish said these stones had strange animals carved on them. They didn't know what they were. They just reported it. You know, we went across this desert and found strange carvings. Today they are known as the Nasca burial stones from the Nasca desert. They were probably built about the time of Christ, roughly 500 BC to 500 AD. These stones are a little smaller than a football, though they range from, you know, golf ball size to the size of a lazy boy chair. The average is about the size of a football or less. Here's Dr. Decara, a medical doctor from Lima, Peru, who collects the stones. He has 11,000 of them in his collection. These stones have dinosaurs on them. Now, it's interesting, if you really study this topic, and I read Dr. Decara's book, and I know several folks who've been down there many times to study this. I could get one of the stones for $2,000 if I wanted to spend $2,000 on one, get one of these little Ica stones. I've held them in my hand. It's just an amazing story about these stones. This one, for instance, over 50,000 have been found in Ica. This one shows a Triceratops. Behind him is a Stegosaurus. In front of him is an Ankylosaurus, probably. Off to the left is an Apatosaurus, long neck, and a T-Rex of some kind. Notice on the sides of this one, you see the circles in the skin? Keep that thought in mind. Here's a guy hitting one on the head with something. Dr. Baugh is a friend of mine from Glen Rose, Texas. He has 2 of the stones. If you're driving across and stop at the museum, you can see his Ica stones that he has there. He went down there and was able, because he's a museum, they do a museum-to-museum transfer. You're not allowed to sell Peruvian treasures, or you'll go to jail. Now, because of this, the people who are finding these stones Have to be very careful what they do. Don Patton lives in Garland, Texas. He has one of the stones. You can see some good pictures on him on the website bible.ca, which stands for Canada. /tracks is the... Now, I don't agree with some of the stuff on bible.ca. They do have a lot of interesting material on there, on this website. Anton Willett is a friend of mine from Canada. He speaks French. He went, and Spanish and English. He went down there and spent 8 months studying the Ica stones. He gave me the book about the Ica stones that I have, and the pictures that he took of these Ica stones. There's his phone number if you want to call him up, 450-359-4405. Dennis Swift is a pastor in Oregon. I preached at his church, at a large Nazarene church there in Beaverton, Oregon. Has about 2,500 people. He collects the stones also. Goes down there twice a year to study this topic and brings back the stones if he can. Here's, again, notice the circles on the side of the dinosaur. Kind of strange. Here's Dennis Swift holding one with a triceratops on it. The carvings in these stones are pretty amazing. They all have a coating on them that comes with time. It's called oxidation. Almost all materials, or many materials, if they're exposed to the air, they oxidize. You know, your car starts off bright, shiny paint. After 10 years, if you don't do anything, it'll oxidize and the paint fades. The oxygen actually, gets into the paint and oxidizes it. Well, that's what happens to these stones also. So they analyzed these stones and said that the coating on there, the oxidized coating, would require several hundred years to accumulate that much. So if somebody comes along and says, well, these stones are fake, somebody made them last week, we have several things to prove that that is not true. Number one, the oxidized coating on there says they're at least several hundred years old. Number two, the Spanish reported them 400 years ago, before dinosaurs were even a popular idea. Number three, this circle on the side is interesting. Now, dinosaur bones have been found for the last few hundred years and reassembled. Nobody had ever found dinosaur skin. Dinosaur skin would not fossilize very easily. A few times, skin impressions were found where apparently the dinosaur fell down in the mud. He rotted away, but the mud hardened, and it left behind an impression of his skin, and you can see they did have scales. In 1992, I believe, a Bolivian missionary found fossilized dinosaur skin. This is from Dr. Baugh's museum. Again, on the dinosaur on the left, you can notice the circles on the side. They've discovered now that dinosaur skin has Rosetta patterns, they're called, circles. Now, if the skin wasn't discovered till 1992, but the stones were discovered 1940s, basically. The Spanish knew about them, but in 1946, they really became popular. People started going after these things. How would they know to put the circles on the side if you're carving them? You would not know to put those circles on the side of the dinosaur because you didn't know dinosaurs had circles in their skin, because no skin had ever been found until 1992. Interesting. Now, because it is illegal to sell Peruvian treasure, they sent, because of this, all the information about these stones, somebody, I think it was Nova or some science program, sent somebody down there to Peru to investigate. They got down there and they got this, one of the farmers who has produced most of the stones, and he won't tell anybody where he gets them because he's out robbing these graves. That's what he's doing, these old graves. And he sells these stones to tourists or to Dr. DeCara, who buys as many as he can afford. They got this guy on camera and asked him, where do you get these stones? Now understand, if you are getting Peruvian treasures, ancient artifacts, and selling them, you go to jail. They say in Peru, a jail sentence is like a death sentence. Because they're just, you think Mexican jails are bad. They say Peruvian jails are the worst there are. For one thing, they throw you in jail and lock you up. They don't feed you, they don't entertain you, they do nothing for you. If your family on the outside doesn't bring you some food, you will starve to death. Average life expectancy in a Peruvian jail is about 2 years, is what I've been told. So, here's the camera videotaping this Mexican farmer, or this Peruvian farmer, and they're asking him the question, where do you get these stones? Right behind the camera are 2 Peruvian police officers. in case he says, I'm digging them up out of a grave and I'm selling them. He's going to go to jail. So the guy stands there in front of the camera and says, oh, I make these stones. It's a hobby of mine. So they gave him one of the stones that had no markings on it, gave him the same kind of rock, and said, here, make one for us. So he carved one out with a scratched the surface like that, and it was lousy. Nothing similar at all to what he had here. But the scientists came home and said, see, they're saying there's dinosaurs lived with humans. We know it's not true. It's Peruvian farmers making these things. It's all a big hoax. And that story is still reported today among the evolutionist circles because they got this one report where somebody went down there and investigated it. Well, it was just simply silly the way that was done. They have the oxidized coating. They had circles in the skin. They can't make them like this. Nobody's been able to now anyway. The simple fact is they're trying to cover up for the obvious. They don't want to admit that maybe man and dinosaurs lived together. Dennis Swift here is holding one. Again, you see the circles on the side of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, probably. Here's a guy cutting the head off of one. Obviously, I would think a dinosaur-like creature. Here's a guy riding one. Some have suggested that maybe dinosaurs were used to help build some of the giant buildings, like the Great Pyramid, or the huge stones found up in Peru in the mountains that weigh 20,000 tons. Well, the biggest crane on Earth today can only lift 3,000 tons. There's a picture in there of a 100-ton rock in that book, The Puzzle of Ancient Man. These are up on the top of mountains. And they're cut and they fit together with part of a wall. How do you move a 100-ton stone? Well, some have suggested maybe dinosaurs were involved. In a city called Acámbaro, Mexico, if you look at Mexico City on a map and go west about an hour, you come to the city of Acámbaro. John Turney, I've talked to him on the phone, never met him yet, he's in Connecticut. He's been there many times to study the similar stones that are found in Acámbaro, Mexico. Down there, this stones with dinosaurs and humans on them, it's kind of a cult. They're guarded. It's kind of a secret. They don't want people knowing about this. But at least 56,000 of these stones have been found, and they're locked away in a big museum. John Turney's been in to see them and photographed them. Again, you find dinosaurs and humans together in Acámbaro, Mexico. Now, first place, who on earth would sit around and carve 56,000 stones? Why? If you're just going to lock them up in a museum. What's your motive? I think we have evidence, very strong evidence, of man and dinosaurs living together.